welcome to Radical Books and Politics. It is a huge, huge honor to have David Romero, performer, activist, poet, the author of My Name is Romero, and I think maybe tell us about you. I know you're from LA, right? Or
yeah, I'm from Los Angeles County, specifically Diamond Bar, California. I'm a Mexican American poet. I'm multi-generational Mexican American on my father's side, dating back to all the way back when it was still Mexico. So a long, long time ago, we Romeros, we've been here. And then my mother, I'm second generation on her side via Zacatecas and Chihuahua. So yeah, so that's basically, yeah. What's that?
Yeah, that's real revolutionaries, real fighters.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So a nationally touring spoken word artist and poet, and I just published a book. My name is Romero, as you are kind enough to highlight on the bottom of that screen.
It's worth. I think I've given it away about 4 times already. Gonna keep gifting it. It's so good, and I'm gonna have you read this later. But I've read Poor Spaniard like about 5 times to friends, and they love it, and they get it. It's so good. But I thought you could tell us more about the title of the book.
Okay, yeah, so My Name is Romero. It comes from the single of the book. So I have a habit of doing that with, I did that with another book of mine, Diamond Bars. And that came from the single, and following with the way of an album. Because I always kind of thought, I had always been inspired by people like Saul Williams and Sage Francis, who went into making, music after doing spoken word poetry. So I always thought that I might be doing making music at some point. And I always liked that idea of, pulling the book title from whatever the single was. And for me, that poem quickly became the organizing thesis of the book. It really became like, okay, I want to write a poem about history, about family history, about identity. And that single poem contains a lot of the things, a lot of the elements that are found in the rest of the book.
So you started putting the collection together before you had a theme?
Yeah. Generally what I do is, I write, I free flow, I write, and then at a certain point, then that's when the idea of the theme, comes to mind. Then I'm like, okay, well, what fits in with this book idea, this book theme, or that one? So, I'll retire certain pieces or, shelve them, put them in a separate folder, and then yeah, the challenging and exciting part as a writer becomes like, okay, well, now I have this theme. Now I have to write stuff for this,
Cool.
And that, yeah.
Sorry, there's life happening in the background, and somebody needs to turn her SpongeBob SquarePants down. Thank you, my love. My 5-year-old daughter who just discovered SpongeBob SquarePants. What are you gonna do?
Oh, that's great. That's great. So many generations now loving SpongeBob.
Well, I just want to see the cooperative elements of it and how SpongeBob is well, let's not get too much into that. So I find that fascinating because you sound to me like you're more of the difference between a plotter and a pantser. The plotter has to have all the outlines and A to B. They know the ending. They know all the chapters are going to lay out. But it sounds like you came to it to a more organic realization and then wrote towards that. That's really cool, And it's good, I think, for other writers to hear that how they develop their chapbook is up to them, right? And I know some people are more I can't do systematic, man. I think I'm more like, well, let's come up with the theme and we're going to put the poems towards this, and there's going to be part 1, part 2, and part 3, but that's as far as it goes, It's like, that's it. So in the vein of you wanted to be a singer, do you sing or play a musical instrument, or was it like just this idea?
Oh, wow. Well, there are a handful of poems in which I start singing, because that was a whole spoken word trend
Cool.
for a while, was to incorporate a little bit of music, a little bit of singing. So I have a couple of poems where I do a little bit of singing, but I'm not really a good singer. I like doing karaoke, but that's about it.
No, I've you should cut a CD if you haven't already. Cut the CD, and you can have music and the band in the back. I actually I don't know how familiar you are with the poetic scene here in Chicago, but well, I'm on the road. But Adam Gottlieb went from being a performance poet, a slam winner, and now he's a musician. And I found that transition to be fascinating. To me, it's not a huge leap, but he also he plays multiple instruments and he can sing. So I was wondering if maybe you were heading in that direction, because to me, when you have really beautiful song lyrics, it's poetry, you know?
Yeah.
Just,
Absolutely.
You know? Yeah, that's awesome. Well, I would love to hear you sing. I bet you're a great singer, and you're pulling our leg, David. I bet you're amazing. So, but when you know, I mean, I think everybody goes through a different, journey when it comes to writing poetry and performing. When did you know you were a performer?
I knew I was a performer. Okay. It was all the way back to an elementary school play. We were challenged to create little skits based on these fairy tales. And I remember ours was the Frog Prince, and I was the Frog Prince. And I had been very shy up to that point. I was never like, I would get teased for being like this little handsome kid, or, or I was flattered. I guess people were flattering me. They were flattering me, but I thought they were teasing me. So it would always make me resentful of like, oh, look at this handsome little boy. I'd be like, oh my God, they're teasing me. They're teasing me, So I was always very shy, growing up. And I remember doing this Frog Prince, and I'm doing these pratfalls and just like really going for it on, as a performer. And it, it just hit. It just like people loved it. I remember this is like the first time where I really realized like what a talented performer I was. And and then like that goes on through, but I never super got into drama or anything like that. I always maintained like, no, I'm a serious writer. I'm a serious creator. And yeah, it wasn't until I started performing at a poetry venue called the Poetry Lounge in Hollywood, which is one of the biggest spoken word venues in the country. And that's a big crowd of, poetry fans, people who judge slams and have watched all these different performers. And that's when I started performing in front of them. And I think that's really when I gained that level of confidence of like, okay, if I could perform in front of this big crowd of like diehards, to the genre, then I know that I've got something.
Right. No, that's beautiful. I don't know when I realized I had a big mouth, but it was pretty early on, probably in high school. I remember one time, you get a kick out of this. I was really into costumes for some reason. I don't know why. It was nothing sexual. I was just really into costumes. And one time I dressed up like the Statue of Liberty. This was when I was getting my master's degree. We were having the first ever open mic, which was like a big deal in the small community, So I dressed up like Lady Liberty, and logically I figured she didn't wear underwear because she was French, right? So I go to this performance, and then we were nervous, so we decided to go drinking. So we had a few shots of tequila, right? So we get to this performance, and I'm feeling confident, and for some reason the lights were super hot. And then like I was like really cooled off halfway through, and then I got a standing ovation at the end. Nobody told me my damn costume had slipped off, and I was like, "Wow, thanks a lot." So I learned a lesson that day. One, you really gotta have safety pins. You know what I'm saying? I was like, "Damn." Nobody said nothing. People in the front row were like, "We didn't see anything." I'm like, "Liars, liars, liars." It's like, it was a good poem too. But that's crazy, man. Let's tell you what. But I think there's something. Wow. Yeah, I know. But I'm not as good as you. In fact, maybe could you read a piece for us? It could be.
Yeah. There was I think you had mentioned Poor Spaniard.
Oh my gosh, I love that piece.
Which, I mean, that's really great because that's a poem that I actually haven't memorized. So I'm going to read it. And yeah, I think that's really cool. Like, I really love this piece, but this piece has never become like a super big hit or anything. So yeah, here we go. Poor Spaniard. As Mexicans cross the border and Mexicans hop the fence, as Mexicans line up at Home Depot and the news announces yet another Mexican arrest, you tell the world, chest out and proud, my family may have come from Mexico, but we are Spaniards. Poor, poor Spaniard. You wear your arrogance like steel-plated armor, drink from glasses with edges sharper than the ends of conquistador helmets. I pray as you sip, you do not cut your lips. You sit in air-conditioned living rooms. Imagine them as open-aired verandas. You like to show off how light your skin is. Blue and green eyes, you say, run in the family. The splash of color of dresses in a twirl dancing, only for the right occasion, and certainly not enough to sweat. Otherwise, they might think you were getting out of hand. They might think you were a Mexican. Poor, poor Spaniard. How dare you fling words like wetback illegal? How dare you fill the word Mexican with spite? The ancestors you claim committed genocide. Poor, poor Spaniard. You weep for your lost land. Hold on to your claims. This charade has gone on long enough. Old and tired pieces of paper, there is much to them as Don Quixote's daydreams, and the truth is a windmill sweeping down to knock you off your high horse. True, we Mexicans are not all descendants of Aztec princes and princesses, more of our ancestors buried beneath stone blocks than atop. But yes, the blood, it flows through veins. Eyes cannot be stopped from wandering. Indio, Maya, Yaqui, Mulatto, Aztec, Mexica, you see your own people and you say they should go back to Mexico. Poor, poor Spaniard. If you love Spain so much, why don't you go back there? And what will you find there? Your sangre pura, nearly 800 years of African and Arabic influence, language, architecture, science, Moorish lute made Spanish guitar, rhythmic dances, and your beloved Spanish rice from Egypt, Iraq, and Iran. Poor, poor American. Something lost, something imaginary is your only claim. Your allegiances shift with the flag of the day. The melting pot for you is good only if you make sure you have erased the ingredients. You stay on your side of the fence. Now you answer. Did you come from Mexico? Did you come from Spain? Did you come from some white Eden in the Middle East or North Africa? Where did you come from to keep your blood so pure and your nose so high? Where did you come from to dare fill the word Mexican with spite? Show me on the map. Yes, that's right. Nowhere. You poor, poor nothing.
It's beautiful. You know, the ending of that piece, well, oftentimes the endings of your pieces are so perfect. And I don't know if you're the kind of writer, like, do you have the ending in mind when you put a piece together? Or does it come to you being what I suspect is the pantser writer that you are? And that's a compliment. It's not an insult. That's what they call them, people who don't plot. Plotter or pantser. But that's probably more fiction.
I think that one. Oh wow, trying to remember. It was actually I typed it on this computer in this room. I think that did just come to me because I think at a certain point, or maybe I built it in at a certain point. There's a poem, "The Tiger" by William Blake, very classic old poem about the existence of evil. It's a counterpoint. He wrote another poem called "The Lamb," right? And in that poem, what immortal hand or eye could frame thy fearful symmetry. And then at the end, what immortal hand or eye dare frame thy fearful symmetry? So in the same way, in this poem, I repeat a line that I had said earlier, but the second time I say dare, just like William Blake, if you're going to steal, you got to steal from the best. So,
no, and it works really well. And I like the repetition of poor, because it has different meanings, it's just a beautiful poem. And people laugh because they can relate. And it's not just Chicanos who remember. Like my mom used to say, tiene el pinche nopalón en la frente, no habla español. And she would say it in Spanish to these people that were trying to pass for white. And she would basically say, you have a fucking cactus on your forehead, but you're acting like you don't speak Spanish. And you knew they understood her because of the visceral reaction. Remember one time this guy turned beet red and he wanted to say something important because then he would admit that he was passing for white, and it was beautiful, man.
Right.
Beautiful. She was a little old lady. She was very non-confrontational, but man, when she thought you were trying to pass, woo. And she would love this poem. She would love it. She would love it. If someday I'll read it to her. I'll try and say it as best I can.
That's great. That's great.
No, and then really, at least, like, I'll tell you some story sometime about my brother sending videos of my performances. I'm like, why do you do that? You get me in trouble. Like, I cuss a lot about. We used to cuss a lot. And I was having this deep political message that got published in this book that was like, for me, it's like the New Yorker. It got published in the last Overthrowing Capitalism volume that Jack Hirschman was. So it was a huge deal, right? But my brother records this and sends it to my dad, and my dad picks up on all the curse words. And there's this deeper political message, And so my dad calls me home. He goes, "Hey, are you just saying bad words to white people and the audience?" I was bringing past him again. I'm like, "Oh my god,
yeah. I thought we taught you better than that."
But my question is this, because we asked you, Matt Cedillo, we asked him the same question as creative writers, and I was curious to know, how do you memorize your poems when you perform them? What's your process like?
It's mostly repetition. It's mostly just for me. I really favor the reading it over and over and over. Usually that's the first step, is reading it so much so that I can picture the words on a page, and then I become more familiar with the rhythm of it. A lot of times too, I will record the poem. I will record me reading the poem, and then I'll listen to the recording over and over and over. That's like, like the way we, learn lyrics to songs very often. Right? It's just listening. Right. So it's like, it's doing the same thing for us, making ourselves the song that, we keep listening to. And then another technique that a lot of people have done is, a lot of spoken word artists particularly, they actually write the poem in their head long before their keys or their pen, touch, physical. They're actually repeating it, like Matt does that a lot. Like there are times where like he'll tell me, "Oh, I just wrote something," and he already has it memorized, but like I know that he's been writing pieces of it in his head for a long, long time, and just hasn't, committed them to, any medium yet. They've just been living up there for a long time, so that when he finally connects them together, he has this longer piece. But for me, usually it's only maybe a handful of lines or a metaphor or an idea of what to write about that lives up in my head.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because I never thought of doing this, but because I think of a poem as a unit, right? And maybe I think about it that way, and that's how I put it on paper. But he was talking about how he divides the parts. He'll work on one part of the poem, then another part, then a third part. And I'm like, oh, that's a cool process. But it's unique to him, right? I do think that there are. I've met other poets like that who write the poem in their head. But it was fascinating to me. He did the same thing. He goes, "Oh, I've been working on this poem," and he had it memorized already. And I'm like, "Damn, dude!" But I guess right? He's memorized it once he's written it, and I mean, I could. It's amazing to me. Performance poets, I bow down to you. I think that is such a great skill to have. and I don't know. I envy it. I wish I could. I don't even remember my poems. I have to like, I mean, hold on, pull up the phone, and then I'm just like work hard on it. It's hard.
Well, I mean, an opposite for, I mean, I definitely, it can be like a crutch, right? Because, I mean, I know personally is that like, I know that I really only perform my best when I have something memorized and I have it, well in my head. Because there are a lot of times when I read, like I see a lot of page poets who are very confident to read,
Okay,
they're
you like that.
extremely.
Did I tell you my annoyance? Oh, Jesus. This is my biggest annoyance. This happened at the last performance I was at.
What? What's that?
I dream of clouds. I'm like, dude, if you're going to pull the phone out, I don't want to see you reading the phone. You know what I'm saying? And it's like these people who think it's trendy. I'm like, yo, you're not being trendy. You're being annoying. You're not reading the poem. You're like, it was terrible, dude. It was like the worst. And the poem may have been brilliant, but I didn't hear any of it. So yeah, it was bad. And these are seasoned poets, so then I'm like, brother, put your damn phone away. It's like anyway, paid poets too, that they'll get up there and they're able to. I think it's just there as a confidence booster. I think they've got most memorized.
Yeah.
But I like that too. So who is your favorite poet that you've seen perform? Don't say Matt.
I always wonder. I've started wondering now, because Matt and I talk a lot, and we always talk about like ways that we can help each other out. So I thought like maybe I should like start saying Matt. I should just like but Matt has enough prestige.
Oh sure,
he has enough prestige. He doesn't need my help. My answer is always Saul Williams. Saul Williams is one of the first poets that I ever saw live who just blew my mind. Just shockingly like, oh my God, like what is this? To me, it was a whole other art form. And in a way, I mean, he really is like a genre unto himself. He inspired a lot of people who were kind of copying his style. And maybe a lot of people were doing it. Maybe they were influenced by some of the same things that he was. So they were creating similar work. But yeah, it's not this heavily mythological or esoteric form of poetry that he really perfected or, innovated has really gone down in popularity, since then. And there were a lot of inferior copies, like a lot of, real detail imitators, but he really, really perfected it. And it's really funny actually to say is that Matt like hates Saul Williams poetry. he admires what he's done, he respects the man, but he really doesn't, because it has such a high level of wordplay. It's a lot of style, and he questions the substance, right? I personally think there's a lot of substance, even when I disagree with some of the substance in there, but for me, the style is on such a high level that even though that's not what I do, my poetry stylistically is very much simpler. It's much more based on repetition of lines, motifs, themes. It's a lot more straightforward. But that's what I really admire when I think of poetry. The type of poetry that I really like to read, not to write, but to read is poetry that's multi-layered, that you really got to sit down and you have to analyze. And I think a lot of people wouldn't expect that from me. They might think like, oh, this, because they would read my funny poems and be like, oh, well, this guy. But like,
but I mentioned that to myself too, David, that you are funny, but the political depth of your poetry is outstanding. I mean, you're grappling with questions of race and class. You have deep historical allusions in there. It to me, you could do a really excellent theoretical analysis of your pieces. You know what I'm saying? And not that you have to do a theoretical analysis to give it validity, but the poems are powerful. I just think that you have a way. You're a people's poet too. You people can understand your poetry. It's not obfuscated, but it's there, man. I really think so. And maybe they would have to like look up what is Mexica, what does it mean to be
Mm,
Yaqui, right? All things that
yeah.
carry deeper context to them and add layers, right? So yeah, I would definitely not undersell your poetry at all. I'm actually looking forward to reading it in my class, and I said for the spring, either my creative writing class or my English 101 class, so they can see other kinds of poetry. It maybe even the fall. I have to look at my book. The book orders here, like you have to order the book so far in advance where I work
Oh, right,
that
right, right.
it's just so dumb. And then you don't want to overburden the students, and so I got my book set for the fall, but not for
Oh,
the
great.
spring, you know. But it is amazing. I'm looking forward
Mm.
to it, and we'll see how
What?
it goes. Cause I did order that book for my U.S. Latin American Lit class because it was missing a poetry collection. But this is what I mean is like as an academic, I call myself an academic. These are the kinds of poems that can lead to broader projects. So
Yeah.
it would be perfect to do a historical analysis of the content of the poetry, or to look at issues of culture or language, you know. And there's so much depth to the collection that it is really excellent. And I'm recommending it to my colleagues and other professors. So hey, you got to check out this work if you haven't seen it already, you know. Um, so I think it's great, you know. And even the title itself, I mean, that right there could be a whole research paper, you know.
Mm,
It's my
mm.
making
Well,
noise. I don't know if
I
you heard
want
that.
to. There's background. I want to thank you very much. That means the world to me. That's always been my dream is to be studied. And that's one of
Oh
the
yeah,
large reasons why I put a discussion section in there with
right.
a discussion guide with questions based on many of the poems. I had developed that from a workshop.
No, that's rare. That's rare even for I have yet to see a really well thought out. And I read a lot of poetry books. They're not in there.
Mm.
Not even in my favorite, like this one. I'm like, I'm gonna tell Jack. I say, yo, my man, you really got to put the workshop questions in here because this is beautiful,
Oh,
right?
right, right.
Sorry, it's got a bunch of stickers, but I think that is gold right there, man. That right there is worth
Yeah,
it forever.
yeah.
Yeah,
Because yeah, I was thinking like a lot of my poems, yeah, are inspired by a lot of the research that I've done, conversations that I've had with Matt, a lot of my professors at USC, Curtis Marez, Todd Boyd, number of others who really exposed me to, all of these ideas that I'm putting into my poetry. So I'm thinking like, yeah, this has depth. This is definitely these could be entry points to a number of conversations, and so I'm really glad that has been taking off. A few other writers, California and in other states. Educators have informed me that they will be presenting the book to their class either for creative writing studying or ethnic studies studying or
right. Yeah, that's what I was
historical. Yeah.
gonna say. Ethnic studies, history, creative writing. Because the wonderful thing about the book too is like you're a performer, but you have been able to translate the performance poetry to the page in a way that works, right? And that's hard. That's something we actually talk about in my creative writing class. Now that we're doing the poetry unit, does it read well on the page or does it perform better? Like, what are you gonna do
Mm,
with the punctuation as opposed to reading it out loud? And it's that takes a lot of skill, David. I don't even think I got that. I'm more of a
mm,
print poet, you know.
mm.
Um, but I do think that these days you do have to have a performance presence. A social media presence doesn't hurt to get
Right.
exposure. And you can't be shy. You can't be that writer that's hiding in a cave somewhere. And I'm like, yo, do you want people to read your work or not, man? Like
Yeah.
those.
Yeah.
I mean, okay, maybe not. There's that one Italian writer who's anonymous, and she wrote that Netflix series. I mean, but that's rare. That is rare.
Yeah.
You know what I'm
Yeah,
talking about?
that's kind of a one in a million
I
shot.
know,
I
right?
think that
And
yeah,
I
that's
think.
kind of a problem that a lot of people have in their mind. For them, it's like I'm either here. Okay, where are my hands? All right, let me get them in
Oh, you
frame
good?
to
You good?
illustrate my example.
Once on your chin.
It's either here at the top of fame or it's I die anonymous, right? And
Mm.
within in between are all these different levels, and it's better to live here than there. But people think if I can't get here, then I
No,
die
no,
anonymous.
that's a good
You know?
point. And so much opportunity now, not just because the business is changing, But like I think of somebody like and I don't tell me if you hate her, but oh my gosh, Rupi Kaur.
Oh, Rupi Kaur. Yeah, yeah.
Well, you know what? I know people rip on her work, but you know, I've heard her speak. I've taught her poems in my class because I had a
Oh,
lot of
nice.
artists at one point. There's depth and beauty in those poems,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
people like to make fun of her and whatnot. But look, I don't think she would have gotten where she was without Instagram. Quite honestly, you
Oh,
know.
no. Oh,
So
absolutely not. Absolutely not. I mean, that's real art to pair the short form poems, because people like short form content, especially when it relates to universal issues,
oh yeah,
with drawings. I mean, there's something extremely relatable about that. Everyone has their journal entries, and that's what the books read like. They read like diaries. And what I find ironic about it, because I could, as simple as my poetry can be, I could rip on Rupi Kaur for the simplicity of her craft, because it's very simple, but it's intentionally simple.
I
What
think
I find more repugnant is the people who criticize her, who write poems that are as simple as the ones that she writes. And they write them without making Rupi Kaur money. So, those are the real people that I think
you know,
have.
I have the opposite approach to writing community. I try to be inclusive and inviting and help people. And like I'm putting out an anthology. And I'm going to tell you, man, I try to be as inclusive as possible in the anthology and as many new voices. And it's, you know, it's hard when people didn't read the submissions guidelines. But I just think I'm not competing with any of you. You know what I'm saying, David? Like you I'm
Right.
not competing with you or you. And I yeah, it's just it's partly it's this capitalist system we live in, but we don't have to be dog eat dog like in the past. You know, I mean, there's room
Right.
for
Right.
us, there's room for everybody. I just don't think people are in that frame of mind. Like there are still the gatekeepers. You know, I'm not saying people should be lazy
Oh,
with
yeah.
craft either. People should hone their
Yeah.
crafts, but damn. So, for example, I'm putting which I invite you to submit to Nation Chapbook. We
Yeah.
had a little contest first, and so there were winners for that. And then I open up the call for submissions, and I'm like, look, if you hit the theme and there's no genre or style, just no genre or style limitations, submit your work, you're gonna get in, because it's a charity
Nice.
vote. Money's going to the Chicago Freedom School, and I think people read that and they're like, what? And so I thought I was going to get enough to have more than a chapbook. Hell no. So I extended the deadline to August. It's like, what happened? It's like,
Yeah.
dude, and then you get to pick your font if you want to have it a particular way, you know. Shit, dude, I tell you what, if I'd have said you got to wait so
Right.
this
Right.
is
Right.
highly competitive,
Which,
then
which, if
everybody
you had
would.
wanted it standardized, then people would want to choose their font, because that's like always the way things go. It's always the opposite of what.
It's
Yeah.
funny, man. It's a good experiment. So we'll see how it goes. The cover looks gorgeous. I've gotten a few
Right.
some really great submissions, including Jerry Pendergast, who I really like, and others. And I don't know if you know Lou Rosenbaum. Lou Rosenbaum.
Oh,
He
yeah. Yeah. Lou's a great guy.
yeah,
Love Lou.
doing the forward for me, you know. So I think it'll be very
Oh,
nice.
that's great.
And I'm hoping he submits a piece. Lou is also a poet in his own right. Goodness gracious, man.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Amazing.
Very well read. Very,
Yeah.
just eloquent
Yeah.
speaker and
And
writer.
I think that's, to me, poets like Lou that have been so crucial to establishing community. That says a lot more than having to be way up here and competing with people and tearing others down. You know, I don't know, man, but I don't want to get negative. It's just that I think there's so much room for people to learn from each other and to uplift each other.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
like my mission in life. Like I will uplift emerging writers and we'll
Right.
promote literacy so everybody reads.
Well, it's just, I mean, that's the thing with everything. Like, I think last time we talked about, like, when you're talking about this, it reminds me of my scholarship. Like, I created a scholarship to give high school seniors. The winning writer gets $500, right? And you think, okay, $500, like, it's not a ton of money, but there should be like a good number of submissions for this.
Yeah,
And it's actually every year, it's really hard to promote. It's really hard. Like $500, like students should want this. Like this should be helpful. But that's just the thing. Is like even with something like that, like when you really want to make something happen, you really have to work for it. You really have to make it as easy for people as possible, because understand that people are fundamentally lazy. They're fundamentally lazy. They're fundamentally distrustful.
Copper submissions, man. All they saw was magic. And I says, magical realism. There's a second part. Like, got all this high fantasy. I'm like, no, dude, I don't want to read your poetry. Witches and warlocks.
And people like to hop on bandwagons. You know, like once a certain threshold is met, then a bunch of people will jump on.
That's the truth. Yeah. And hopefully you've gotten more, especially now with this woke generation. You're probably going to get inundated now. You know.
Yeah.
It's for poet activists, right? Your scholarship.
Yeah, it's for it's a social justice scholarship, so it combines a poem written on social justice issues, and that's however the writer identifies that.
That's amazing. So they don't really have to be active; they could just come up with a poem that's related to social justice, and they could still win the scholarship.
Well, they could if it's really good. The second part also factors in any charity or social justice work that they do at their school or in their communities. That also combines with, an evaluation of their academic, merits, any other accomplishments, awards, anything like that. But yeah, if the poem is just so mind-blowingly great and they've sat and done nothing, then yeah, they might win.
Maybe, but it's unlikely. No, I'll tell you what, David, that's beautiful. That's actually, because I also chair a couple of their scholarship committees, and the contributions are really important. In fact, I would say the contributions are more important than looking at their bank statement, because really it's not.
Right. Right.
But in academics, and so for the union, that's really important. And we've been very what's the word I'm looking for? Deliberate about giving money to undocumented students and international students, and not caring about those limitations. So I love it. It sounds like a fantastic project, and you also fund it yourself, which I think is brilliant. And that way it's on your terms, and you can keep it going. You know what I mean? So that's amazing.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, and this is a lot about you. I think that's wonderful. I think more poets need
to I didn't want the reason why it's funded by me again is I didn't want to be beholden to any companies or any donors. For example, there was a friend of mine, who not to go into too many specifics, but he wanted to donate, and I was skeptical of his donation. Not skeptical of the money, but skeptical of what he might want in return. So that's the kind of thing that I was looking to avoid. With anyone who might want to come in and like, oh, let's change this, or let's narrow this focus, or do this or do that. And so I like it where I reach out to judges and I keep them anonymous, but ultimately all of the the weight of the decision and the responsibility of giving the winner their money falls on me. And
yeah, and it maintains the integrity of the scholarship too that way, right? So I think that's brilliant. So do you want to close us out with another poem?
Yeah. What kind of mood are you in?
Let's do a cheerful poem.
Okay, a cheerful poem. Okay. Let's see here. We'll go ahead and we'll go ahead and do the single, since that's kind of how this started off. And let's see if so I recently tried to do this poem from memory, and I'm so out of practice with my poetry that I had to read it, and I was very embarrassed. So let's see if that happens again.
Challenge accepted.
It happens every single night. Telemarketing Juliets, calling from their ivy-covered balconies, calling for their star-crossed lovers, calling, hello, is Mr. Romeo in? I'm sorry. Romeo went to go grab a burrito, Mercutio to cruise Whittier Boulevard, and Shakespeare to take some ethnic studies lessons. In other words, fucker, Romeo isn't in. My name is Romero. I am not Italian. Centuries old Spanish blood coursing through these veins, though my parents are not from Spain. And despite the Southern Californian accent, the lad's words like, dude, sweet and thick. to tumble gracefully from these lips. I'm not a white guy. I'm a Mexican. My name is Romero. Romero like Archbishop Oscar Romero, zombie filmmaker George A. Romero, actor Caesar Romero. Yes, before Jack Nicholson, before Heath Ledger, a brown man played the Joker. They dressed him up in purple suit, green wig, and white face, but he would not shave his trademark suave and sexy Latin mustache. No, he was a Romero. I am a Romero. My parents had dark hair and dark eyes. When I was 7, my brother lied, told me that my father was the mailman. How could you be the son of our parents with your blue eyes and white skin? Well, brother, fucker, like Jerry Springer or Maori, the DNA results are in. I am a Romero, and I know what some of you are thinking. That I'm just another white guy trying to prove he's a Latino, or just another Mexican chest beating his chest, beating whatever reputation he has left in the process, trying to convince you that his family, his country, his nationality are better than you. Well, I know as well as anyone that we are all the children of Africa, roots of no single family tree, but of a flourishing forest that grows collectively towards a magnificent destiny, shining, radiating beauty. Just please close your eyes and you can see it. Oh, but fuck that shit. The name of this poem isn't We Are the World, We Are the Children. No, the name of this poem is My Name is Romero, because if you're not proud of who you are, then what the fuck are you going to be proud of? And if you don't know where you come from, how are you supposed to know where you're going? And I know one thing. The name of my father and my father's father and his father's father before him was Romero. Thank you.
Beautiful. That was amazing.
What a fun experiment it is. Like, for me, the hand motions are so important to the performance of the poem. So I had this tiny little box.
But the voice is so good. You got the voices down beautifully. Oh man, I loved it. You read it better than I read it in my head. I think I may have read this one out loud to my students too, but gorgeous, gorgeous. So where can the viewers find you on social media?
Yeah, so on social media, I'm on Twitter at David A. Romero 84, on Instagram at David A. Romero Spoken Word. My website, davidaromero.com. You can Google me, David Romero Poet, David Romero Spoken Word. I should pop up. I've beaten all my tocayos, which was actually initially a part of this book. Decided to get rid of it, but would have been fun. Maybe one day we'll see the unedited version. But yeah, I think that Facebook, David Anthony Romero. Thank you so much for having me. I'm really glad this worked out. Hopefully it did go live.
We'll see. Be Live's gonna owe me lots of money. I'm just gonna cut that out of the video. No, David, thank you so much. This was amazing and just really amazing. I can't wait to bring you on our campus. I shouldn't call it a campus. College. It's a big controversy. Our college this coming fall, so people can see you via Zoom, and it's going to be just as amazing, if not more, than this performance was in this interview. Thank you, David. I learned a lot from you today. So have a wonderful, blessed brother. Thank you for all you do for us.
Thank you. Bye.
Adios. Adios. Hey, book lovers. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe.